Okay, I think we make a start. Good afternoon, everyone, and many thanks for joining this session. My name is Helen Thomas, and I'm the Assistant Director of Leadership and Succession in HEIW, Health, Education and Improvement Wales. I'm joined this afternoon for this session by two of my colleagues, Jackie Parsons, who leads on the Succession and Leadership. Welcome, Jackie. And Emily Miller, who leads on the Programme Management and Digital Management and Leadership Development work. So thank you both for joining us, and we'll hand over to Jackie and Emily respectfully, or respectively, as well as respectfully, later on during the session. So I'm going to share my screen with you and make a start on sharing our journey with regards to transformational leadership using compassionate leadership. So hopefully you are able to see the screen, and I'm going to move through a number of screens before handing over to my colleague just to talk really and engage you in some of our journey. So we have a very bold vision across health and social care in Wales, and that vision is born out of our strategy. We have a health and social care strategy for NHS Wales and Social Care Wales that was released and published probably a few weeks ago. There's many strands, as you would imagine, to that workforce strategy. One of the key strands, though, driving through that strategy is leadership. And our bold vision is that by 2030, leaders in health and social care will display collective and compassionate leadership. Now, you heard yesterday from Helen Bevan that in order to become architects of change, we need a bold vision, and indeed that is a bold vision for us to progress to. We also understood from Helen yesterday that in order to be architects of change, we need to understand how the world works and go with it. And that's exactly what we did in creating this leadership vision and our architecture of leadership journeys to help us meet this vision. So how we went with the world? Well, we did quite a significant amount of engagement when we were developing the workforce strategy around the type of workforce that we needed, but also around the leadership that we needed to support this workforce. And we asked individuals about the leadership style they wanted within the organisations, the culture they wanted, and the behaviours that they wanted espoused across health and social care in Wales. In addition to that, we also held a leadership engagement conference last October, or a year October now, 2019. And again, the messages we took from there were very much about a collective and compassionate approach to leadership. So we included this in our vision, and that vision is very boldly stated there. Underpinning this vision, if you like, some architecture underneath this, or a framework for us to build our journey to 2030, is some strategic actions. Action 25 is around developing a strategy to drive a consistent approach to compassionate leadership across health and social care in Wales. Action 26 was around establishing an accessible range of leadership resources and programmes for individuals and organisations. And Action 27 is around developing talent management pipelines for the more senior of roles across health and social care to ensure we have that sustainability of leadership to enable transformation to happen. Again, I'm going to refer to Helen because yesterday she also mentioned how to look at the best models and implement those best models. Well, I guess the Welsh version of that is steal with pride. So throughout this presentation, I'll be referring to the work that we've been undertaking with our colleagues across the other UK nations and how supportive they've been to allow us to steal with pride, to build on some of the work that they've done and certainly help us establish a programme of work ourselves. So we created a route map on helping us to reach our 2030 destination. And our route map was around mindset. How do we create a mindset, a collective mindset across the 82,000 staff in NHS Wales around compassionate leadership? How do we help them to understand what compassionate leadership is and how it impacts them, and how it's going to create safer, inclusive workplaces, how it's going to focus on the health and well-being of staff, and how by supporting our workforce will we deliver better health outcomes for the communities that we serve across Wales. So mindset and creating that standardised approach is one of the key things on this roadmap. The second then area we focused on was behaviours. So if we create a mindset, a collective approach towards compassionate leadership, how do we then create these behaviours? How do we become compassionate leaders, and how do we espouse and develop compassionate behaviours within ourselves? And that again is around that offering, that leadership offering around teams, and around organisational, around individual leadership offerings. And then the other part of our route map, I guess, is validations. How do we check in throughout our journey to be sure that in 2 years' time we're still on that trajectory and the things that we have put in place are actually the right components to deliver that strategy. So whilst we have a route map that takes us to a destination of compassionate leadership across the system in health and social care in Wales, maybe we won't all be using the M4 to get there, but certainly our end destination will be the same, even if the routes in the first year or two might vary slightly. So I'm going to talk very briefly about some of these key actions, that framework I talked about, which underpins our overall vision. So I'm going to talk about Action 25, first of all, of this workforce strategy, and that was about driving a consistent approach to compassionate leadership across the system. We've had the immense privilege this year and last year of working with Professor Michael West and some key experts across the UK nations with regards to compassionate leadership. And in order to try and get that collective vision and understanding of what we mean by compassionate leadership and compassionate behaviours, we've taken the components of compassion that Michael talks about. He talks about being in attendance, being present and listening with fascination, in order to be able to understand and seeking to understand that situation or context, being able to empathise, and then that will move us on to that helping action, to be able to take action to support those individuals, team members, or individual person or patient. We've created that as a compassionate leadership compass to try and make a reference point for everyone across Health and Social Care Wales with regards to what we mean by compassionate leadership. And we hope this will become our North Star. These behaviours will be anchored in our psyche, anchored in our behaviours, anchored in our values. We heard Will Young yesterday talk about how at the end of each day he does a reflection piece and is grateful for three things that have happened that day. And other people mentioned how they do something similar. With myself, I actually anchor myself into this compass, and at the end of the day I reflect on the compass and think, how present was I with individuals or the team today? Did I really understand some of the frustrations they were going through? Did I empathise and move to help and support that team or those individuals to move forward? So hopefully this will become a common currency throughout all our leadership programmes as we move across the three areas of leadership. So that was one of the pillars, if you like, that helps us to drive that consistent and compassionate approach. The second pillar was around the creation of some compassionate leadership principles. Again, Helen talked yesterday about that when you leave the door of your organisation, your power and authority diminishes. You are no longer able to develop change across Wales based on authority or position. So in order to deliver transformation and in order to work together to do that, we need some common principles to work with. And we went out to consultation on these principles in March this year, and then paused due to the COVID pandemic, and went back out to consultation in September this year and asked our stakeholders, do these principles resonate? Will these principles help us to communicate, to behave, to engage better across organisations and across communities in order to deliver the transformational agenda in Wales? The feedback we had was very much positively, yes, these are really a real good start. Why wouldn't we want to have some principles guiding us? Why wouldn't we want to have principles when we engage or with other organisations, when we commission services or when we undertake procurement, so that the organisations that we liaise with and partner with also display these principles, so we can actually work far more productively and in co-production together. We had some real gems of feedback as well, which will help us amplify some of these messages. But the ambition will be that we will launch these principles December this year or January. And again, these will underpin all our leadership offerings across health and social care in Wales and the way in we behave and interact with each other. The final pillar in our drive for a consistent approach to leadership across the sectors and system was about creating an open access resource to recent, credible, compassionate leadership materials. So to do that, we created a leadership portal, which we call Gwella. And Gwella is the HEIW portal for Wales, and it's a one-stop shop for leadership. And on this portal, we will be able to access a whole range of compassionate leadership offerings and other opportunities to engage as well. And my colleague Emily will give you a demonstration and talk a little bit more about the opportunities there later on. So we had three key pillars really that underpinned that action really about driving a consistent approach to compassionate leadership. If I just look at the next action, which was about establishing an accessible range of leadership development resources and programs, here are some of the milestones in our journey there. So what we have done, as I mentioned, is developed a digital resource library that is available to anyone, and it's available via open source. To create that resource library, we've been working with a number of experts, including Professor Michael West, who has provided excellent research materials, and we've been working with partners, expert partners, including the King's Fund, Open University, and a number of other partners from Wales, as well as across the UK, in Northern Ireland, Scotland, and NHS England. So we are harnessing all of that really good, robust information on our compassionate leadership offering on Gwella. We've taken some of the materials that Professor West is working with us on, and we are developing those digitally or transforming those digitally. So they're available in bite-sized chunks. They're available on Gwella for you to access via the learning journey, or they're available for organisations to use as learning resources during their own leadership events. Linked to that work, our universities are working with us to create a compassionate leadership or compassionate leader in practice module, which will sit on master's degree programs in health and social science, and that will reflect or contain 20 credits at that master's level. But not only will it be on the undergraduate and postgraduate curriculum, we can use that as a standalone module. So anyone across our system wanting to utilise our learning materials and engage and produce the evidence can get that 20 credit module in compassionate leadership. We're also developing some leadership measurements. So for example, how do we measure if you're a compassionate leader? How do we measure if you're an inclusive or a collective leader? How do we manage that you created those team conditions for the team to thrive and continually improve and produce better patient care or client service care? And how do we measure how good we are as system leaders? So again, Professor Michael West is developing these with us currently. Next year, we will be launching the first of our many multidisciplinary clinical leadership offerings. And that's about how we robustly create leaders of clinical as well as non-clinical executive leaders within the system. So really excited to be looking forward to progressing that next year. We're also, from these programs and from the work we've done and the opportunities we have on Gwella to do virtual networking and virtual alumni, creating some networks. And those networks, as Helen mentioned again yesterday, they will become our current, they will become our key connectors, and they will become the new power, if you like, vibrantly spreading that compassionate leadership movement across NHS Wales. And that last part there is about the virtual classrooms that we've integrated into Gwella. And we did this back in April, and this enabled us to continue to develop and support the workforce through COVID. by providing leadership resources, health and wellbeing resources, and it's since allowed us to be able to undertake some very ambitious conferences and undertake masterclasses and provide a provision of high quality leadership opportunities for our aspiring and existing leaders. This will help us hopefully create a really truly blended approach to leadership development over the coming years. The last action I want to talk about is Action 27, and that then was around developing a talent management pipeline for the most senior of leadership roles. I'll just briefly touch on some of these because my colleague Jackie will go into a little bit of detail after me now. So if you're having a pipeline of talent for the most senior of roles, we have to start, that pipeline needs to start and end. So the key thing we are establishing next year is an internship programme for health education and improvement Wales. We're engaging with Cardiff University and our Cardiff University students, so we co-produce that internship. So we basically co-produce something that students will want to do, will want to take up, will want to come in to the workforce of NHS Wales and understand the key opportunities and the varied roles that are available. We've also recently re-established the NHS Wales National Graduate Management Programme. We had 301 applicants for 13 places. There will be a graduate in each of the organisations across NHS Wales, and they will commence in September next year. There's extreme evidence and robust evidence for these graduate programmes working. In fact, the Chief Executive of NHS Wales, Dr Andrew Goodall, was indeed a graduate, as was our Chief Executive, Alex Howells. So we're really looking forward to re-establishing that next year and then intaking graduates and interns on an annual basis thereafter. We engaged recently with aspiring and existing executive leaders across NHS Wales and asked what they needed to sustain them currently, but also help them make the next steps. Some of our aspiring or some of our existing assistant directors, whilst very competent in their role, recognise that they are only performing, I guess, a part of their director's portfolio. And we're keen to know, well, how, if they needed to step into this role as a director, an executive director, how do they get experience in the other areas of the portfolio that they don't currently lead on? And that's, I hope, where the National Talent Board will play a key role. It's going to be chaired by Dr Andrew Goodall and it's going to comprise executives from each of the NHS Wales organisations that have the authority, the power and the inclination to be able to open up opportunities for people to have experiential learning and opportunities at that executive level, whether that be a secondment, a national project, whether that's executive mentoring, attending boards, etc. And that will supplement some of the leadership offerings that we will provide also. We're also looking at establishing a national and very transparent talent management process for NHS Wales. Jackie pick this up a little bit more in more detail in a moment. But linked to that, we're integrating talent management software, and this will produce a self-service and inclusive opportunity for people from all areas of NHS Wales to be able to nominate or engage in talent, engage in success in measuring themselves against some of the profiles that we have, and having some robust feedback and a personalised learning journey. Not only will it allow that, it will allow us to look at developing some dashboards so we know where our talent pipelines are, more importantly, where our talent pipelines are not. And integrating this data along with data from our workforce plans and data from ESR, we should have a very mature outlook really of where our talent pipelines are, where our hotspots are, and where we need to actively target executive leadership to make sure we sustain that comprehensive and executive strategic leadership across NHS Wales. Linked again to that, we're exploring a chief executive programme for new chief executives in Wales, and that's from those that come through the pipelines in Wales and also that come across perhaps the border into Wales. And again, you know, building on best evidence practice or stealing with pride, we were working with NES, National Education Scotland, and Project Lift to explore how they've done this and then how we can manage that offering here in Wales. We're currently working on developing a success profile. So what does a good executive director look like now, and what will they look like in the future? And then how do we create, I guess, opportunities to allow people to progress and develop into that and into that level? And Jackie will pick up on that in a moment, but that's something we're working with our partner on now. And then lastly, but excitingly, we are also working with the King's Fund, and that's going to be about the delivery next year of an executive leadership programme. So we've engaged with our executive leaders and our aspiring leaders, and we're starting to map out what that executive leadership programme will look like and the supplementary offerings around that, both experiential coaching, mentoring, etc. We will stratify whatever gets developed at an executive level to our clinical leadership, our team leadership, and other individual leadership offerings as well. And we will share that widely across our NHS Wales organisations. So that's hopefully a little bit of a gallop through some of the work that we've been doing to aspire to that vision of 2030. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jackie now, who will talk about some of the recent things that we've been doing with regards to succession planning. So over to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Helen. If you could move the slide on, that would be great. Thank you. So in order to achieve a number of the actions and objectives there that Helen was mentioning, we held a virtual event, Talentbury, a festival of leadership, learning and collaboration. And this has really been a bit of a springboard, really, for our work moving forward on executive leadership development. It was originally planned for the spring and then the summer, but obviously delayed through the pandemic, and was at last delivered in October and ran over 4 days. Our target audience for Talentbury were aspiring executive leaders. So we asked organisations to identify those who they felt had the potential to move to a tier 2 position, an executive director position, who had the potential and the ambition, if you like, to move in that direction within the next 1 to 3 years. Organisations invited a range of, or nominated a range of people who were then invited to attend Talentbury by our chief executive and invited to join the talent pool for tier 2. I guess some of the learning through this process for us has been that local approaches taken to identifying talent were really very variable. There appeared to be a limited number of robust mechanisms in place, and no very clear standard process across NHS Wales. So this level of maturity suggests that some support is needed, and as a national organisation looking at talent and succession planning, we intend to run a programme of workshops for OD practitioners and development leads, along with a talent management toolkit to be able to support local practice moving forward, not only for executive leadership, but also right across the system. So the purpose of the event was threefold, really. It was to co-create and consult on a number of things. So one of those was the success profile that Helen mentioned. A success profile being for executive directors, outlining the behaviours, the values, the skills, the knowledge that we expect people moving into this level of position to have. We also wanted to explore specific portfolios. So we ran a number of profession tents at our event, looking specifically at workforce and OD, which may be of interest to this group in particular, clinical leadership and those in planning, to see if outside of the generic offering, are there particular needs, I guess, for these particular portfolios at executive board level. So the event, secondly, also offered leadership development through exposure to some expert speakers, masterclasses and workshops. You can see we adopted a festival theme with different tents really focused on the different leadership offerings and opportunities throughout the 4 days. Altogether, we had 120 people registered for Talentbury, and thirdly, I guess, our purpose is to develop a network of compassionate, vibrant leaders for the future, and we'll be setting up an alumni network now for those who attended and were identified as part of the talent pool. So next slide, Hel. So this 4-day virtual event, to our knowledge, is the most ambitious conference that's ever been run in NHS Wales. Certainly, probably the most ambitious virtual conference, with this medium being fairly new to all of us, I guess. And we heard a lot yesterday in the talks about being bold and courageous. And I think as a team, we really held our nerve on running this event. There were a number of teething problems in terms of access to the new digital platform and learning system that were in place. But we looked at contingencies and mitigated risks. So that we were fairly confident that that we would be able to deliver a great event. And as you can see here, we have some feedback. So the word cloud in the centre was generated on day 4 of the event, and identified a number of elements that had been particularly found to add value or enjoyed by the participants. And then post-event, we undertook a more formal evaluation, and some of the comments there you can see in the speech bubbles. So some of the themes that came out from the evaluation was that they particularly valued the speakers and the insight that speakers brought, particularly those that came from outside of the NHS. So what can we learn from industry and other areas? It was felt to be an opportunity for reset and recovery after a very difficult time. And there was a little bit of pushback on the timing of this event, but actually some of the evaluative comments there you can see on the screen said that this was a useful time to hold such an event, that actually it was really needed to support individuals to have a little bit of headspace and some time for reflection during the recent challenges. So providing that headspace for reflection was very key. And also, despite the virtual nature of the event, people mentioned networking as one of the opportunities that they really enjoyed. And we built in a lot of networking through the collaborative sessions, through the workshop sessions, which were more interactive and inclusive, and using our breakout facility within the virtual classroom. So that worked really well to ensure that we had those peer conversations, sharing best practice and people's experience. And clearly messages and takeaways around compassionate, inclusive leadership appear to be well embedded after the conference, and that's what it was really all about. We also got a great deal of information and useful insights through the collaborative events to support the success profile, as I said. And Silver Maple and King's Fund also supported us with this event hugely and are using the outputs, if you like, of those sessions to inform their work moving forward. So next slide moves us on to where does that leave us with, and I guess the King's Fund particularly interested in some of this information in terms of what people wanted to see more of and what would really help individuals to develop and I suppose bridge the gap that people are experiencing between their assistant director roles and moving into a board position where there is a massive breadth of portfolio rather than a more focused one. So Mentimeter, word cloud again on the day, particularly and also through the conversations that people had in the collaborative sessions, mentioned mentoring, coaching and action learning as the 3 standouts, I think, from the event that people felt would really support them in their development. So perhaps more individually focused activities along with that peer learning and opportunity to network. But we did a more formal evaluation after the event, and you can see here perhaps focused people and asked them what they would like to attend in the next 6 to 12 months. And actually a more formal programme, an aspiring executive development programme, was mentioned along with masterclasses as being something that was quite highly scored, along with some of the other activities that we've already heard. And certainly we're planning to include those within any programme that we're moving forward with next year. So moving on, Hel. So we are moving now to a three-tiered approach in terms of our talent management and succession planning, with the overall outcome of developing compassionate leaders at our executive and senior levels in the organisation. We've heard a lot about the developing talent piece there. The talent board will steer very much how we identify talent in the future, but we do anticipate that we will be running development centres to identify those ready now and ready soon candidates with clear development pathways identified for individuals afterwards through coaching conversations. So it's not a one size fits all. We certainly see it as individualizing the development offering to ensure that people are prepared for these roles in very challenging positions, and deploying talent. So where do we go once we've identified who the talent is? We need to ensure that through our talent management digital solution, we are mapping and tracking the individuals that have been identified as ready now, in particular, and signposting opportunities. But those who are ready soon, that may need some experiential and some further development, can be signposted to opportunities such as placements, interim secondments, to maybe gain that wider experience that they need. And again, keeping the compassion in mind, once people move into executive positions, we want to ensure that we continue our support to them with some wraparound and coaching support for those people new in post. So back to you, Helen.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to hand over to Emily now for a presentation or a demo of Gwella. So I'm stopping sharing my screen, and over to you, Emily. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Helen. I'm going to try and share my screen now, and hopefully this will work. And someone shout at me if not, Helen or Jackie. But I'm assuming that everyone can see this now, so I can give you a demo of the Gwella HEIW Leadership Portal for Wales. So this page was launched officially in August this year. And as Helen has mentioned and Jackie has mentioned, it really is a key enabler to a lot of the work that we've been doing. What was key is that it needed to be available to everyone. So what we've done is we've created this public-facing page that allows access to a load of our resources, a load of our offerings, opportunities, and offerings from partners, other organisations across the board. So it really becomes this one-stop shop for leadership and is really inclusive and accessible to all. So on the homepage, I'm just going to signpost a few key areas. You can see across this top section, we've got some panels here. We've got this ticker tape here, and basically that pulls through from our resource library some of the key or most recent resources that users can click into and read more about. And I'll show you a bit more of that in the resource section as I move through this demo. This tile here about Gwella. So this is where we can really explain our program of work. So much of that context that Helen gave earlier is wrapped up here in this web page. We've got our vision, we've got our actions and what we're trying to deliver. And then we can signpost to a range of resources and pull it all together nicely in this environment. So for instance, our principles are hosted here, and we used it as a tool to help get engagement when we were out for consultation, and users could come here, access the document and find out how to feed into that. And once these principles are published this year, we will then host it on our site as a resource for anyone to access. We've also got, as part of our tools around compassionate leadership, that compassionate behaviours compass built into a HTML page, as Helen mentioned. This compass helps people to sort of ground where their behaviours are. So that's available on our site for anyone to access. We've also got a range of information around what compassionate leadership is, so people can read more about it, watch videos, and access any other resources that might help build their understanding. We also host some articles for the King's Fund, and I'll show you some more of that in our resource library. But we work with them really closely to ensure that we are providing access to these really valuable pieces of literature or articles or materials that can be provided to our staff, and again, for anyone, accessible to all. We've also got a section on talent and succession. Now, Jackie has outlined a lot of the work that's been done around talent as part of the programme of work, and Gwella will be used again as the underpinning technology to support a lot of that. At the moment, we've got information around what we're trying to achieve as part of the talent management processes, but we will be enhancing the system, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail towards the end of the demo to support the talent management processes. So this section will evolve as that unravels. You can see here we've got a dedicated panel to our graduate programs. Now, Helen mentioned the programs that we've got on offer. So our general management scheme that was launched this year, and we used our site predominantly to signpost users and talk them through the process of applying, which I'll show you in a second. But just to note, this website, this platform isn't just about showing our opportunities, things that we're putting on. It's about signposting to partners. So any organisations that want to put content on here are able to, because really it's just, again, making people aware of the opportunities that are out there, not having to search for them. We want to make it a one-stop shop. So just to show you the graduate scheme, this was a whole infrastructure designed on our site that allowed users to go through, find out about the programme, what was on offer, the process of applying, to view some videos of other candidates and find out how they found the programme. So it became a really useful tool to host all these materials and allow users to navigate amongst these and find out how to apply. And we were also able to develop eligibility tests using the content creator on the site, so that they could undertake a quiz to see if it was the right sort of program for them, and they could go through that on the site. So there was a whole range of tools that we provided as part of the launch of the grad scheme through our Gwella digital leadership portal. And what's key is our resource library. So clicking into this library provides the user with a range of taxonomies here to click into and find out more. It also has a search bar across the entire resource library, so they can search for specific resources or tools. And just to note here, you can see that we've got a whole section dedicated to partner organisation resources. And what's really important to note that, again, this isn't just about hosting resources we've developed. It's about curating materials from partners. So anything that helps to pull together information about compassionate leadership, tools, videos, blogs, we can put it together here and put it in these meaningful categories that people can navigate through. And again, just to note, it's not just about articles. We've got videos on the site that people can watch. In terms of the learning resources that we have created, Helen mentioned some of the work and the digital resources we're creating with Professor Michael West. And this is an example of one of those here. So again, the content creator functionality on the actual platform allows us to develop these digital resources. So Michael provides us with literature around some key areas of compassionate leadership, the evidence base, some tools, and we're able to really bring this to life through these digital resources with images and clickable content so that users can click into things they perhaps have more of an interest in or are more relevant to them, and they can navigate their way through this. All the resources and the entire site, in fact, is bilingual, and that's key for us in Wales as part of our deliverables. And we also looking to enhance these into training resources. So we can, organisations can use these as part of their leadership programmes, and they can be embedded into blended learning pathways along with attending an event, watching this TED talk, some experiential learning, providing some evidence of that, some reflection. So we're really able to build these learning experiences and some self-led learning in this platform, which is really helpful for leadership development and what we're trying to achieve. Back to the homepage, we have our latest news here. And again, just a signpost, we can show that there are leadership offerings in different places across the board. The Florence Nightingale Foundation, for instance, has a leadership and transformation scholarship available. We hosted a festival for the AHPs on here. So again, it's just supporting that approach of signposting to our partners, not just about hosting our own resources and materials. And you can also see here that recently we were announced winners of the Learning Technology Awards 2020 for the work that we've done around Gwella, and specifically some of the enhancements we made throughout COVID-19, and some of the resources we made available, and we really accelerated our programme of work to help support in that time. So we're really, really pleased and honoured to have been given that award, and we actually received it in the post today. So that's been really nice. And part of what we had enhanced in the site, as Helen mentioned, was the virtual classroom functionality. So the site has event booking functionality, which we've integrated virtual classrooms. So now that our partners and ourselves, we can host events that are available virtually, and they can click into the different sessions and launch the virtual classroom directly from in that event. So it's really opened up loads of opportunities during a time where we might have struggled to continue to deliver, and organisations across Wales and professions might have been struggling. So it's really helped. And what we've seen now is a big uptake of organisations coming to us and wanting to host their leadership programmes and networks on here and make use of the functionality available to them, which is brilliant. And it sort of achieves our vision of organisations continuing to run their own leadership programmes that are compassionate by nature, but we've got our compassionate materials and tools that we're developing with the King's Fund, with Michael West, supporting some of those programmes. So really trying to achieve that vision of embedding compassionate leadership throughout. So in terms of account holder access, we can utilise the portal to support networks and programmes, and as I mentioned earlier, learning pathways and courses and leadership resource development on the site. So if an organisation wanted to host a specific programme or network on the site, we're able to create them with this tailored landing page. So when their users come in, they see something that is specific to them. They then can host their network on there, which is an environment for discussion threads, one-to-one chats between users, sharing of files, signposting to the latest events and useful events, assignment of learning pathways can take place in these networks. And you can really see here the breadth of networks that are now starting to appear on the portal across professions, across organisations. So we're really starting to see this grow, and we're really pleased that that's the case. And what is also brilliant about the site is that, as well as being part of a network, as well as perhaps being part of a programme that they can talk with other members, they can also create their own profile. And this profile is really personalised, so they're able to specify some of their experience, their qualifications, their interests, upload a picture, a background, preferences in terms of English or Welsh. They're able to list their expertise so that other users can find them and interact with them. And they can set themselves as discoverable, so they can network across the site, across the system, across professions, etc. So as I mentioned, they can have one-to-one conversations, which are hosted here. They can manage their own files. Any certificates they've attained will sit here, any badges they've attained or their learning record. And they can also customize, and we'll be building a range of interests that they can subscribe to. And what that will do is really personalize the experience for the user. It will mean that when they come in, they see resources that are useful to them. They see people that they might have interest related or professions related, upcoming events and networks. So it really creates that personalized learning cloud environment for the user, as well as being as part of a membership of a network or program. And as part of that, we're going to build on now with talent management capabilities. So they'll have their own profile. They'll be able to carry out 360 and self-assessments. We'll integrate the success profiles and have the whole infrastructure of the site built around those, so that when they do complete these self-assessments and they have their output or their 360, we can signpost them to resources or events or tools or materials or learning pathways, blended learning pathways or networks that will be of use to them to help them fill those skills gaps and achieve the levels required in that success profile. And then they can go through and be added to a talent pool, which Jackie mentioned. There'll be a whole process around that with the talent board, and the portal will act as an enabling tool that will underpin that whole process. And we will be able to have talent dashboards that allow us to see across Wales who are already now talent, who are already in 2 years talent, so we can meet that talent succession strategy of 2 shortlistable candidates per executive role. So we're really utilising the system here to provide that information to us, and we'll have some really valuable data around that, including some equality data that we'll be building into the system, so that we can build in any positive action for underrepresented groups, as well as part of the inclusivity work that we're carrying out. And I think that's probably everything I was going to cover as part of the session. So I'll hand back over to Helen now, and I'm sure we're probably going to have some questions coming through. Yeah, back to Helen.
Thank you, Emily. Nearly forgot my mic then. Just summarise really by sharing one final slide. Just to call out some big ticket items that we'll be delivering next year. As you can see, we're expanding Gwella. We're integrating Diva talent management into that Gwella and continuing to grow the opportunities and the leadership offerings that we have. We're developing or re-establishing the core competency framework for leaders and managers and supervisors across NHS Wales, and creating a pathway for how we make sure that our supervisors, when they move into that role and management, are competent and confident to deliver that in a compassionate way. We'll be looking at establishing development centres. We're establishing the development board or the NHS, at creating some masterclasses on racial injustice and inequalities, and we'll be doing that towards the end of this year. Vibrant alumni networks will exist next year, and they will coexist with executive leaders and executive leadership programs, clinical leadership and clinical leadership programs, and again the commencement of the graduate program, which will be on an annual basis. So that's a bit of a roadmap really for 21-22 of building on what we've achieved during 2021. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just checking the questions. Thank you, Amanda, for your questions. And there was one question earlier on around who is the talent manager provider, and I think that was from Lucy. Lucy, we cannot tell you that yet because we're interviewing and finally awarding them in the next 2 weeks. But please drop us an email, and as soon as we've awarded that contract, we can share that with you, and we can share the specification with you, and hopefully share any other work that we've done. I think we've answered some of Amanda's questions.
I think Amanda's just popped another one on, Hel. How can you ensure your graduate programme doesn't block talented people without a degree?
Thank you, Amanda, for that. We've actually done some significant research and engagement with our universities, and we've dropped the degree from a 2-1 that was previously used across NHS Wales to a 2-2. And we've also made sure that we're, as part of our SEP, our Strategic Equality Plan, are reaching out to those in other areas and engaging with those in other areas that may have the equivalency to come forward. This is our first forage, if you like. We've taken 301 applicants. We've filtered them down to 97, which are going forward into the online test. 40 of those will go forward then into the interview process. 20 of those will go into the development centre process. 13 will be offered a role. Now, we're unable to do that analysis at the moment of whether we are prejudicing anyone at all, but as soon as the recruitment finishes, we're able to retrospectively go back, look at if we disadvantaged anyone and can start to learn some lessons from that. But welcome any sharing of information or intelligence you might have. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but that's our intention of the next, from February onwards, before we recruit to any further programmes. Lucy's asking for contact details. Yes, indeed, Lucy. I'll just pop my email in the chat.
And I think if
I
anyone...
can certainly circulate them to anyone else, yeah. Is there any other questions that I've not missed, Jackie or Emily, or are there any other questions? If not, thank you so much for your engagement. We're happy to discuss and share and promote any materials you might have otherwise. I'm just conscious that you will be moving on to another session now, so I don't want to hold you any further if we don't have any other questions.
Yeah, I can't see any more in there, Hel.
Okay, and thank you, Amanda, for that information that you've just posted. Thank you all for participating in this session, and look forward now to seeing you at the next session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.